my name's Catherine Gilby. I'm mostly talking to these people in the screen, but I'll kind of address you guys too. So this is our third seminar, and it's built on the back of, see, I actually wanted Dr. Sue to be here because she's the instigator. She's the reason that we're all here doing this. And she's the reason why I chose this topic. So I'll kind of fill in time a little bit before she while she logs on. And I'll start by recognizing that I'm on Aranda country here, and that it's my great honor and privilege to be able to walk and talk on Central Aranda country, and that when we're welcome to do this, it allows us a sure-footedness when we do it properly, when we actually are allowed. Because in old ways, you'd be lighting people would light fires this end and say, look, we're coming on, to your country, and they'd wait to be welcomed. And so it's it is with a real sense of gratitude that I just embrace the opportunity to be able to walk and talk and earn my livelihood on this Aranda country. I use this slide, so the images are just as important in some ways as the words. And these are all texts. They all have meaning, and they all have value and importance as public statements. So this is my brother's work, and he's passed away now. And he died from racism, and he died from homophobia. And they literally killed him. And so I use his work because this is all the things that he found important, this montage. So he put together all of the things that this is part of an exhibition that was, traveling through South Australia. And I use this slide to remind me that these are real world issues that we're talking about, that these are, that this is real. These are not some abstract theories. This is not some, so let me just quickly check. And I use it because can everyone see it? It's freedom rides, it's sorry business, it's the vote for yes, it's all of his passions and his, social justice causes put onto a single piece of paper, onto a board. And then, it's a reminder to me that these public statements do matter. Oh. This is one of my grandmother's paintings, and it's of a place. Blood watch, split hoof. And so this painting moves. So as the light hits the painting, it changes direction. And I've used this as a public statement, as a piece of text, to show just how clever, our old people are, just how amazing that they can visually represent land to such a depth, in such detail, that it changes, that it moves, that it's actually a moving text. So I just use this as an image to say, it's a public statement around pride in culture. This is deep in our Aotearoa country. And it's just so clever. Wrong computer. So I'm just going to kind of be telling a series of stories. So I came back to the Territory last year, and before that I was living in Toowoomba and working at the University of Southern Queensland. And while I was there was this whole debate happening around the new bypass that was being built so that all the trucks didn't have to go through Toowoomba. It was like this big, massive capital works project. And And there was this kind of, at the same time, there was this commemoration that was happening. And there was this group set up called the Friends of Multuggerah. And the Friends of Multuggerah were campaigning to have the new, what ended up being called the Toowoomba Bypass, be named Multuggerah Way. And so the main highway into Toowoomba, up the range, is called Darren Lockyer Way. And so that's just not questioned. It's not, it's like, yeah, brah, no worries. Darren Lockyer Way, he's an example of Queensland excellence. He is the epitome of, you know, of all that we want to be as Queenslanders. So there's no question about naming the main highway Darren Lockyer Way. It was uncontested. But the fight, the pushback that happened over naming the bypass Multuggerah Way was intense. Council fought over it. You know, back and forth, back and forth. And we have to ask ourselves then, so Multuggerah was a resistance warrior. He won, he fought and won the first battle in Queensland. And he gathered all of the neighbouring tribes, 18 clans together. And they just stopped and they pushed back and they said, enough is enough, we're not having this. This is a photo of Tabletop Mountain. And so Tabletop Mountain is known as the Battle of One Tree Hill. It's this famous battle. It's like very well documented, but it's documented in a way that's kind of hidden. It's not documented in a way that's public, like a public statement around naming this highway Multuggerah Way would be a constant reminder of the battle that Multuggerah fought. Would be a constant reminder to everybody that there was even a battle, that there was even a war. So in a society that doesn't necessarily want to have to remember the ugly side. So when we ask ourselves, so this is the part that when they, so basically here, let me stand up. So this is Tabletop Mountain. So Multuggerah's warriors gather around the top here. This is the area of the first battle. And this is the only site that they can get through. They had bullet drays and they were taking all the wool into Brisbane. Now, Multuggerah understood that this was the site of commerce. This was business. This is the way you disrupt, is you disrupt the business from happening. So this is the probable site of the warriors' camp. So basically they had the first battle. All the drivers they ran away. So they sent police up to catch Multuggerah. And they rolled all these boulders down. And so it was like this kind of really embarrassing moment for, you know, colonial Queensland. But my statement, the reason I'm doing it today, this is a newspaper article. You probably can't read it. Because I want to think about what is the hurt? Where is the harm? What is the public statement? How do we as a society show what we value? And we show what we value by statues, by street names, by the things that we memorialise. And what does it say about the society that doesn't want to memorialise? This is like One Tree Hill is, you know, you can see it from Toowoomba. It's there, it's an embedded part of, you know, the town's history. But it's not something that they wanted to celebrate. So this is an article. The thing about Myall Creek and other massacre sites is that they memorialise crimes against humanity, says Mark Copeland, one of the organisers of the Toowoomba commemoration. The thing about the battle on One Tree Hill is that on this one day, in this one place, the people stood up and said no more. Then they did a survey. So we got this spreadsheet that showed the city had 14,000 streets and not one of them was named after an Aboriginal, after local places and creeks, but not people. I'm tired of massacre mania, of presenting Aborigines as always incapable of organising against white people, Kirkhoff told me. The opposite was the case. They had victories. And the greatest one was One Tree Hill. So this is part of what I'm saying around public statements, why the power of these public statements is really important. And just the public naming of a street. You know, we don't think of it, but we do. We show what society values by the things that we memorialise. And so then these alternative public statements become really, really important. I hope Dr. Sue's on, because she set up this seminar series literally to improve staff morale. Because talking publicly, sharing what we know and think about with each other is part of what we do. It's part of the education process, but it's also part of, she set it up literally to increase staff morale. She wanted everyone to have, you know, come together to have a feed, to share ideas. So this is a slide from her. So Kunara can speak of Kurum Grabu. This is from her initial talk, because it was such a powerful public statement. When she came down and she shared her Kunarakan knowledge, she said, these storms, these top end storms, they just hold so many layers of meaning. She said, sometimes we know it as our mother. She speaks to us. She sends us warnings. We listen. Sometimes we are afraid. Sometimes she's just playing. We hear her laughter, sometimes sharp, loud crackling. Sometimes gentle rumblings and mumblings and murmurings. And these beautiful examples of, and so Dr. Sue's first seminar, which was designed to increase staff morale. Vanessa's second one, which was all about celebrating language reclamation. This third one, where we're going to just talk about what it means to talk publicly and share. So I put this slide in as an example of just the joy and just the sheer generosity of her gesture. So when she did it, she was talking about, you know, all of the Kunarakan knowledge that has been passed down to her. And so this as a public statement, this is a public piece of text. Her sharing that seminar was a really powerful moment. It kind of brought the whole campus together. And we haven't advertised this one very well. And we have kind of, but you know, there was like 50 odd people there and everyone felt better. Everyone felt like they'd learned something and learned more from her sharing. All texts have meaning. So all texts have meaning and all texts have purpose. People don't usually speak for no reason. Even people who seem like they're talking brainlessly, you know, mindlessly, that has a function. All speech has function, all texts have meaning and purpose. And so what we're going to kind of look at today is what is the purpose of some of these texts. Like Sue's text in that last slide, its purpose was to share knowledge, to increase staff morale, was her intent. So I want to look at public kind of, so when I was writing this down, I was like, it's too political and too radical to say like, take to the streets, burn the patriarchy. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's too much. And I'm not even saying like, let's just all have a protest. But protests do matter. Public speeches matter. And this is a particular time. The Black Lives Matter movement isn't going to go away. Do you know? So there are differences that happen now that are bigger than just technology. It's bigger than just people being able to film it. Do you know, there's a kind of, and so the whole public protest movement, oh, wrong computer, is speaking really, really loudly to people who are in power, and are speaking back to those people. So this is the Melbourne protests. around Invasion Day. 30,000 people came out. Tens of thousands of people, maybe it wasn't, maybe it was 20. It depends on who's doing the public pronouncement of the data, because if you listen to, Channel 10, it was 200. If you listen to somebody else, it was 30,000. And they came out, and I'll just read this. So Uncle Gary told the sea of black, red and yellow of one significant shift he had noticed in more than half a century of campaigning. What has changed, standing out here looking out at all of you mob, is that large numbers of ordinary Australians are out here with us, he said. In the 1970s, a groundswell of protesters fought to raise awareness about the disproportionate number of Indigenous people incarcerated in Australia and dying in custody. This year, another influx of supporters came out in spite of lingering coronavirus concerns to rally, wearing face masks in support of Aboriginal Australians. We are again in an epoch, in a moment of our history where we have the same change again. Uncle Gary said that Black Lives Matter movement is not going away, here or overseas. Powerful proclamation. The people came out and they marched, and they weren't marching to change the date, as it was like kind of minimized later. So this whole, so I don't have a copy of it here, but I wanted the next slide to be Kerry-Ann Kennelly coming out in direct response to the 30,000 people. She came out on national television and she said, what do those people care? Because in the outback, children as young as 8 are being raped. So this is her public, all speech has purpose. And the purpose of that is to take Aboriginal, get off of your high horse. Don't you dare ever think that you can be successful. Had to have 30,000 people come out and talk about incarceration rates and talk about child removal rates and talk about the nearly 500 people that have died in custody. This is what people were rallying against. And it's minimized. It's minimized when it's reduced to change the date. The change the date question should be, why are you so insistent on it being that date? As opposed to, change the date is kind of not what's relevant in some ways. What's relevant is people mobilized, and she reduced it. She reduced us to villains and to victims. That's all she let us be. That's all it is, because the women are victims and the men are villains. And the mythical outback that she named is here. We know where it is. We know what that statement means. When she says, well, in the outback, women and children as young as 8 are being raped. It's a disgusting statement. It's a disgusting statement to say in private. It's a disgusting statement to say on national television, publicly, because it reduces us all to this victimhood. And we know what the outback, she doesn't name a single place. She doesn't say in Alice Springs, but we feel it as here. We feel it as somewhere not urban. So it's a smear on all of us. But her public statement is in response to this public statement, and it doesn't stop there. There was pushback. There was absolute pushback to it. Chelsea, what a go. Wrong computer. So in response to this really powerful public statement from Gary Foley, Kerry-Ann Kennelly has to come out and go, slap. But there are responses back, there's pushback. So Chelsea Wadigo wrote an opinion piece. She says, what happens when Black people affect change? Well, in the colony, the settlers freak out. I don't know if you guys can see that. She says, Kerry-Ann's simplistic and crude attempt to divert attention away from Indigenous people's successful and sustained resistance against colonial control and its associated violence by demonising Indigenous people would be laughable if she didn't have so much backing. She is not a lone wolf or a bad apple, nor is her heart in the right place. She invoked the same tired narrative of Black inadequacy and dysfunction to undermine Black resistance and strength. A debate premised on yet another false binary, that if you care about abolishing Australia Day, you can't possibly care about the violence that Aboriginal women experience. She's setting it up. And even the subsequent debate where she got Lydia Thorpe in, she got Jacinta Price in, she pitted these two women against each other. Do you know, it wasn't a debate, because a debate has premises and arguments that progress. So even their response, Channel 10's response to the initial outrageous statement, was to get these two women in and watch them fight. Like it's just terrible. The other really example of that I wanted to play, Adam, if I put this up, no, it's not going to work on this computer. Is Sunrise. Sunrise is the other example that I've had a video, but so in Sunrise, they had a Aboriginal adoption segment, and they basically said that the stolen generation should happen again. And it was everyone just was, it was outrageous. It was just completely ridiculous. Like they had 3 non-Aboriginal people talking about Aboriginal adoption, but the people came out. They stood there and they just banged on that Channel 7 window, and they tried to deny it. They tried to ignore it. They tried to dismiss it. They got sued over this for vilification. They got censured. And then Media Watch came out and did a segment on just how racist the first segment was and their kind of reduced responsibility for it. And so then they actually got James Ward in. Then they got Pat Turner in, 2 actual Aboriginal health experts to talk about the same issue. And so I guess what I'm saying is it's not hopeless and it's not pointless. And so when people did stand up and say that's not acceptable to us, that's not okay, you can't keep doing this, there was actual response. You know, Channel 7 got in trouble. Channel 7 changed its approach, promised to never do it again. Until the next time, and then you will have to come out again and again and again on loop. So the students will know this one. So this is a clinic and it's a storm. And there is a storm coming. And it's you and it's me and it's all of these students and it's all of the research that these students are doing. And it's why I'm so happy to work in this graduate school, at Batchelor Institute particularly, because all of the research, all of the stories that are being told, all of the public text, all of the presentations, every single thing matters. It matters because we just change people's collective minds a little bit. All of the research that comes out, if it starts to chip away at the narrative of victim or villain, sheer dysfunction all the time. There's the narrative around excellence isn't celebrated. The narrative around victories isn't celebrated. So we have to do that ourselves. And that's why the research that we're doing matters. That's why the stories that we're telling matters. That's why the seminar series matters. This is almost like a homage to Dr. Stanton and her setting this seminar. Like I just am literally the ringing. So, the next month, it's going to be Thomas Mayer, and he's going to be talking, like he's part of the Uluru Statement from the Heart group, and he's like strong in the union movement. And so that's why these seminars matter. So, because they do, it's an opportunity for us to share, but also, like I said, Dr. Sue's intention was to increase morale, was to have food, to share ideas, to, you know, think about things. So we're the storm, all of us. This is like just a little bit of kind of nerdy academic speak, but it's important. So we learn about ourselves by the way people behave towards us and others. we are constituted by these discursive interactions, and we naturally identify or don't identify with people who have similar stories, shared experiences, a discursive familiarity. So what I'm going to focus on is the discursive familiarity, which is text. All text has meaning. And when we see ourselves in a story, it means more to us. When we see ourselves as the hero, it means more to us. When we see ourselves as the villain, do you know, it hurts us. And so this is part of the kind of the problem with the dominant narrative that only exists around victimhood or villainous behaviour or drunken dysfunctional, or, you know, if that's the sole narrative that exists, then real change can't happen. Because nothing changes if nothing changes. We have to start changing the narrative. And this discursive familiarity is just kind of, it just means when you see yourself in it, it means more. You identify with it. It forms part of your self-identity. So when we learn about, when we read stories as children or told stories as children, the stories that we're told matter. This is just for the students, really. This is why our research matters. You know, this is why the graduate school matters. This is why Batchelor Institute as an institute matters. We exist on the back of protests in the 60s and 70s for independent autonomous education. Batchelor exists because people stood up and said, no, we want more. I think that's my last slide. Yeah, pretty much. I wanted to say more. I wanted to have more. There's like a world of content around this. There's a world of content around damaging media narratives. There's a world of content around people standing up and fighting back against that. Elaine rightly pointed out, it was by no accident that I wore this T-shirt today. So this is in relation, this T-shirt was created because of what happened in Kalgoorlie. So we only know about what happened in Kalgoorlie because the people fought back. They rioted. When he was charged with manslaughter, they literally went to the courthouse demanding answers. And so this T-shirt is created in response to that. So it's, but it's its own public statement. It attracts its own kind of, you know, attention and anger and ire or whatever. And so I don't want this to turn into like, you know, I think we should all protest, but we know about Kalgoorlie only because the people stood up there. Do you know, he's not the first white man to get away with killing a young Aboriginal boy. Do you know what I mean? To be let off really easily. We know about Palm Island because they just, when they read the report that said, the autopsy report that said he fell up a step, which is why he died, they rioted. They said it's just not good enough. And so if there's anything that I can, and we know about the subsequent actions there. So these moments of standing up and telling our truth, they do have real world changes. They do. You know, even those changes sometimes really slow, and changes, you know, you feel like you're on a loop saying the same thing over and over again, but change does happen. Societies change. And I think this is a moment of great change for the Institute and for the country, because in Batchelor, we had our own Black Lives Matter rally. And it was, you know, because we literally had it because someone said to me, oh, they're rioting on television. And I said, who's rioting? Like, no one's rioting. It's a rally. It's a protest rally. No, well, I call it a riot. It's a riot. And I was like, it's just not a riot. Do you know what I mean? Like, Australia, we're not doing riots. We're doing protests about really serious issues. And then I was like, I think Batchelor needs to have we need to have a protest rally. And I dead set thought it would be me and Dr. Sue. Do you know, I got the buggy for her. And I honestly, I did. So she was like, and I thought it would, yeah, it would be me walking myself. I rang the police, told them, but it wasn't. They showed up. We had 50 people in Batchelor, do you know, marching for a Black Lives Matter rally. And we had signs that said kids on country, not in custody. And we had signs that said justice for Walker. And the police were there nodding as I was, you know, Ali Mills came and she played that Waltzing Matilda song. Everyone got up and spoke. And what happened to Breonna Taylor and the subsequent rallies that followed, just the unrelenting, you're not going to be able to just cover this up. That state actually changed no-knock warrants. And what happened out here to Common Walker is just as terrible. He was in his home. We don't actually have to, there are lines that are being crossed. And so when we had that placard and when we took to the streets and we were saying justice for Walker, you know, it was just, even though there was 40 of us, it was just as meaningful and powerful a statement as the 20,000. Because, you know, little old Batchelor just did it. Alice Springs has done it. One of the biggest rallies was held here around the alcohol laws. And, you know, the signs out the front. So, I should have put that sign up. So I guess what I'm saying is change can happen. It does happen. It happens in different ways. And I'll finish there.